What's up, guys? Hope you're having a good day. It is an amazing environment right now for us to make money on every single thing that we do. From now until the middle of March, we've got incredible football matches to bet pretty much every day of the week. The crypto market is popping off, and we're back to making a profit on pretty much every single UFC event in live betting. So times are good, and time is also precious and valuable. I don't have a lot of spare time. I know you don't either. Your lives are probably crazy busy as well. So we don't want to mess around. We're going to get into the breakdown videos real quick, because we need to get back in the trenches, carry on making money betting football, carry on making money betting on crypto, and continue working hard to research this card so that when we live bet it on Saturday night, we're in a really good position to bank yet another profit. So times are good, we are making money, but we cannot get complacent. We need to keep working hard, stay focused, and use all our years of experience to manage this period of prosperity as best as we can. If you are interested in getting involved in the community and maybe enjoying the fruits of the labour, the fruits of the hard work, all the links are in the description below. We talk a lot about MMA on Discord, a lot about football as well as other sports, and the crypto channel is obviously extremely busy at the moment for obvious reasons. I mean, it's been busy for years, but it's extra busy at the moment now that things are really hotting up with Bitcoin over $100,000. So without further ado, let's not mess around. Let's get into breaking down the main event of UFC 310, which is going to be Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Pantoja is the favourite at average odds of about we'll call it 1.39, which is going to be minus 256 for an implied probability of 72%. If we take a look at the odds on Asakura, he's around an average of 3.05, which is going to be plus 205 for an implied probability of 33%. So Pantoja is 34 years old, 5'5" with a 68-inch reach. Asakura, 31 years old, 5'8". We don't know what his reach is. So Asakura possibly with a little bit of a size advantage here over Alexandre Pantoja. So I do want to have a little bit of a rant, a tiny little bit of a rant before we get into talking about how these guys match up from a stylistic point of view, because personally I think the UFC is on a run of pretty disgraceful main events. It has not been good for a while now, man. Straight away, like I say, our time is precious, our time is valuable. This main event is terrible, in my opinion. Kai Asakura making his UFC debut. He was the rising champion. He's coming in, getting an immediate title shot. I have no idea why, because fundamentally, he's just not very good. And I'm going to show you a little bit of footage in this breakdown video so that you can understand why he's not very good. This is just a silly fight for me, and it's just another dead-ass main event in a long line of consecutive dead-ass main events we've had now. You know, Yan Figueiredo, dead-ass main event. Jones versus Miocic, dead main event. Magny Prates, fucking awful. And Moreno versus Albazi. So this is the fifth week now. The fifth consecutive UFC event we've had with terrible, terrible, terrible main events. This is a shit fight. This is really shit. This is a shit fight. And I have no idea why Asakura is getting an immediate title shot. Because if we want to be brutally honest, he's not even the best Japanese fighter in the flyweight division. Tatsuro Taira would run through this guy. Tatsuro Taira would dominate him. It would not be a contest. And yes, I know, you know, Taira lost the Royval, and you can't give a guy, you know, a title shot on the back of a loss. I get it. But if they would have done Tatsuro Taira versus Alexandre Pantoja as this main event, with how, you know, how well Taira moves on the feet, how technical his ground game, how good his grappling is, that would have been a far more interesting fight than this. Because, you know, the UFC are honey-dicking us with this fight. It's a shit fight, and they need to fucking fix these main events. Don't get me wrong, I'm interested in Buckley Covington next week, a hell of a lot more interesting of a fight than this. But yeah, this is fucking trash, man. So anyway, if we start off by considering the odds on this one, this is one of those fights where Pantoja should win easily. This is one of Pantoja's easiest fights from over the last few years. But like whenever we break down an Alexandre Pantoja fight, he does have several significant weaknesses that at some point are going to catch up to him, or catch up with him. He's got away with them in, you know, all of his fights over the last few years for various different reasons, with, his opponents for different reasons not being able to make him pay for the weaknesses that he has. Maybe Asakura will be able to make him pay for those weaknesses, but Pantoja's beaten far better guys than Asakura in recent years. So, I'd be surprised if Asakura were the first guy to, take Pantoja's title off him. And for that reason, Pantoja is an interesting bet, as a potential parlay leg. There are a few fighters I'm interested in throwing into a parlay this week for various different reasons. And you guys know my philosophy around, betting big favourites in MMA. It's not something I typically like to do, but if I find a situation where I feel a guy has virtually no way to lose, I will do it, but I'll often like to double them up with a parlay with someone that has kind of a similar kind of risk to reward profile. Out of all the big favourites on this card, and we do have quite a lot of big favourites, the guy next to Pantoja I would say I feel most confident in winning would be Dominic Reyes. I'd be very surprised if Anthony Smith were to win. Yes, on paper Reyes has fallen on hard times, suffered some bad losses, but he still levels above Smith. I think that's going to be another y'all must have forgot performance from Dominic Reyes. The other guy, obviously, Rakhmonov. So Rakhmonov, also Reyes, two potential parlay partners for Pantoja. I wouldn't consider any of the other big favourites personally, just because even though I do think guys like Nchukwu, Hooper, maybe not Bryce Mitchell, actually, we'll talk about that in a bit. But I do think most of these big favourites win. It's just their risk-to-reward ratios are pretty shit because the underdogs in those fights have a reasonably good chance of winning, in my opinion. So anyway, yeah, shit fight. Pantoja should win this easily. Let's explain why. Let's show you some footage to back it up. So, first of all, before we talk about how these two match up stylistically, we've got to outline the issues in Alexandre Pantoja's skill set. And while pretty much any able-bodied flyweight in the UFC will always have a chance of beating him on his night, because ultimately his cardio is dreadful, and we talk about this every single time we break down a Pantoja fight. But Pantoja gets away with it for three main reasons. And in many ways, he does remind me quite a bit of Dricus du Plessis. So the first reason why Pantoja gets away with having dreadful cardio is because he gets really tired in every single fight. So if you want to look at Pantoja's gas tank, pull up any of his fights that went past round 2 and just look at how sloppy he looks in the 3rd, 4th and 5th round. But because Pantoja gasses in every fight, he's used to fighting tired. So it's not like when he gets tired he panics and starts performing badly. It's not like he adrenaline dumps. He's able to dig deep, dog it out, and continue pushing forward and continue trying to win in a similar way to what we see from Dricus du Plessis when he gets tired. The second reason why Pantoja hasn't been able to, no one's been able to make Pantoja pay for his bad cardio, is because he has world-class MMA grappling. He was the former Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach at Nova União, and obviously Nova União has produced fantastic MMA grapplers over the years. Fighters like Hakron Diaz, Claudia Gadelha, Reynan Barao, Jose Aldo. And so knowing that Pantoja was training those guys just shows the level that Pantoja's at on the ground. And because his level is so high level, even when he gets very tired against these, younger, hungrier fighters who've got a lot of energy, much better cardio, guys like Steve Erceg, guys like Brandon Royval, he's still able to obtain dominant positions on the ground through experience and tenacity. And because his grappling control is so good, even when he's very tired, he's able to maintain grappling control and steal rounds with his grappling. This was something that Damian Maia built a career off. Damian Maia was also a guy with a very high-level ground game that had very bad cardio, but because he was used to gassing in every fight and because he had such amazing grappling control, Maia could often use his grappling to steal rounds, run the clock down with grappling control, and that kind of thing. The third reason why Alexandre Pantoja gets away with the his bad gas tank is because he's just got an incredibly strong will to win. So he's one of these guys that is absolutely fearless. He's tough, he's durable, he's got a granite chin, and he's the kind of guy that you have to practically kill in order to beat. you know, a lot of the time when we get champions that have been on a good run and have defended their title a number of times, you know, this will be, you know, Pantoja's 4th consecutive title fight. You know, a lot of the time these champions have a run where, you know, they make it look quite easy. They get nice, clean wins. They put in dominant performances. We've seen this from guys like Max Holloway. We even saw it from Brandon Moreno in the, you know, at some stage of his title run. We see it from Israel Adesanya. You know, they get these clean, dominant wins where they're so far above their opponents that their opponents really got nothing for them. That's never the case with Pantoja because he gasses so bad in round 2 of his fights. All of his fights end up being a war. It's never an easy, comfortable win. He always takes a lot of damage. And it's just one of those knockdown, drag-out, gritty wars where Pantoja just finds a way to win. You know, if you go and look at his fights against Moreno, Royval, Usyk, he's taken a lot of damage in all those title fights. But he's just been able to dig deep and find a way to win. Even though at different times in those fights, he's been struggling pretty bad in all of them. So what I want to do, whenever I make a statement of fact, there will always be people that will challenge me on it. So what I like to do, whenever I make a statement of fact that is so, you know, pivotal in how this matchup is likely to play out, I always want to include a little bit of video footage because at the end of the day, the camera doesn't lie. And if I make a statement of fact, there will be people that will disagree with me and dispute it. But if I show the footage that proves what I'm saying, obviously the camera doesn't lie, so it's indisputable. So with so much of this breakdown video, or with so much of this fight, sorry, being decided by Pantoja's gas tank. So one of the most interesting things about Alexandre Pantoja is that he gasses out very early in fights. So it's kind of incredible that even though he slows down so much, he's still been able to win 3 decisions against some of the best flyweights in the world. And whenever I make statements like this, you know, about Pantoja having a terrible gas tank in one of these breakdown videos, there are always people that leave comments and dispute what I say. So you guys know my perspective on this. At the end of the day, when we do these breakdowns, all I'm doing is sharing with you things that I've seen in fight footage, and I'm just kind of summarizing facts, essentially. So the best thing we can do in situations like this is just show you footage of Pantoja looking tired. Now, what I don't want to do is make this breakdown video super long. Like we said at the beginning of this video, there's so much football to bet at the moment. Crypto's popping off. We're doing amazing on the UFC, and we want to put as much time into researching these fights as possible to give us the biggest edge possible going into live betting on Saturday night. Those are our priorities. We don't need to fuck about going around the houses in these breakdowns. So while I never like to judge a fighter on one performance, what I would say is that if you go and watch any of Alexandre Pantoja's fights that have gone deep in the UFC, you'll see he always starts to slow down in the second round. I'm only going to play you footage of one fight here, and if you don't want to take my word for it, and you want to do a little bit more of your own research, kind of back up what I'm going to show you, then obviously, literally, if you go watch any of his fights or go to a decision, you'll see him slow down in all of them. But in this breakdown video, we're just going to be focusing on the Steve Usyk fight because we don't want to make this breakdown video super long. So if we just skip through to the midway point of the fight, Pantoja's got this takedown on Usyk, and it's not long before Usyk finds a way to work his back up to his feet. So when they get back in kickboxing range, what I want you to do here is pay attention to the breathing patterns, the body language, the movement, and the hand speed of Pantoja, because these are the things that are going to give us the first clues that he's starting to get tired. And remember, we're only about 7.5 minutes into this fight, and so, you know, with these title fights being 25-minute fights, especially in the flyweight division where most of the flyweights have got pretty good cardio, it's kind of shocking that Pantoja slows down as much as this early into his fights. And like I say, this is something that happens in all of his matchups. So what I want you to do first of all is just take a look at Pantoja's body language when they disengage from this position. You can see here he takes a big deep breath, shakes his arms out down by his side, and that's just a little subtle clue that Pantoja's starting to get a little tired here. And these are all the things that are really important to spot, all the tiny details, because spotting these kind of details as the fight's taking place live is what gives us such a big edge in live betting and enables us to make a profit pretty much every week over the long term. So what I now want you to do is pay attention to what Pantoja does in the rest of this round. Because the thing about Pantoja is, and one of the reasons why he's been able to win his last 3 fights, is because he's very good at pacing himself and kind of recovering. But his ability to recover in his last 3 fights has also been aided by mistakes that his opponent made. So what you'll notice about Pantoja is he has these periods in fights where he'll exert a lot of energy. So he may exert a lot of energy to a takedown and a grappling position, or maybe a lot of energy to a big combination that he'll throw. But after every big explosive sequence of energy, he will then kind of chill for a little bit, and he won't do a lot for 30 seconds, 40 seconds, maybe a minute and a half. And during this time, all he's going to try and do is avoid engaging, and you see him do it here. You know, there's 2.5 minutes left to go when they disengage from that clinch position, and now you're just going to see Pantoja back up, circle away, and do a whole lot of nothing. He's not, trying to counter Usyk. He's not trying to take him down. He's not trying to get into any exchanges. For the most part, he's just trying to back up and circle away and do a whole lot of nothing. And this is because he's exerted all that energy on the ground with that takedown, and now he's just trying to back up, catch his breath to get the energy to commit to his next takedown or his next big blitzing attack. And you kind of see it here where he's just not doing a whole lot, just backing up, moving away. Now, even though he doesn't look crazy gassed here, this is a strong indication that he's getting tired, because he's recognizing here he doesn't have the output to match Usyk's pace for 5 rounds. So he's kind of got to take it easy. And now that he's had that minute break, he's got the energy to commit hard to that takedown. So this is a strategy that's worked well for Pantoja since he came into the UFC. But like I say, in his 3 title fights, or his last 3 fights that have been title fights, and again, as he backs up from this position, look at his body language here. Look at his body language as they disengage. So again, big deep breath, hands down by his side. And now towards the end of this round, again, you'll see him, same as what we saw from the midway point of the round, he's going to do a whole lot of nothing here. Just back up, circle away, and just try and catch his breath and recover after exerting all that energy on the most recent takedown that we've just seen. So he's just going to back up, circle away, avoid engaging. So, like I say, this strategy has been effective for Pantoja in his last 3 fights, because his opponents have allowed him to kind of play this game for various different reasons. So Usyk allowed him to pace himself in this way by not being particularly aggressive and not pressing him a whole lot during sequences in the fight where he was looking to take breaks. With Brandon Royval, he did press him, he did engage him, but he kept giving up cheap takedowns, which enabled Pantoja to alleviate the pressure that Royval was putting on him. And with Brandon Moreno, it was like a combination of the mistakes that both Usyk and Royval made together. But you see that after just little brief periods of recovery, he kind of gets the energy to hulk out and hit those takedowns. So we'll just show you the second half of round 3 now, because obviously with every round that passes, you will see him slow down more and more, right? So again, as they disengage from this position, watch Pantoja take a big visible deep breath here. There he goes. And notice how in these sequences, his arms are always pretty heavy and down by his side. So again, there's just been some exertion. So what you're going to see Pantoja just trying to avoid engaging on the outside, circle away. Whereas where he's circling away like this, he's just trying to create space for himself to catch his breath before he commits the next big blitzing combination like that, or another takedown attempt. So if we just skip through, here comes the takedown attempt. Big takedown attempt, and after this big takedown attempt, going into round 4, you're just going to see Pantoja looking tired again. So, obviously in between rounds here, he's had some time to recover. Minute to recover in between rounds. So at the start of the round, he's always going to be a bit fresher. But in the round 4 now, again, low output, just trying to circle away and avoid engaging so that he can catch his breath, he can pace himself and have the energy he needs to commit to those big takedown attempts. And they're difficult to stop because he throws everything into them. My question is going to be, will Asakura stay on Pantoja in these sequences where it's clear Pantoja's looking to take breaks? Because with Usyk, even though Usyk was reasonably aggressive, he was kind of just walking Pantoja down, but there wasn't a whole lot of end product there. These sequences, I mean, look at this. Pantoja's doing very little. Very, very little here in these sequences. And he's just trying to, every minute or so, once he catches his breath, gets our energy back, he's looking to commit to that big takedown or a big combination. But Usyk's kind of letting him get away with this. Look how he's just not engaging here. Not engaging. And now because he's had a lot of time to recover, last minute, not a lot's happened, you can expect a big explosive attack from Pantoja soon. He's either going to commit hard, do a big takedown attempt soon, or something of that nature. It's coming soon. It always is with Pantoja. When he has these periods of inactivity. So when you're live betting a fight like this, just knowing, Pantoja's style, his strategy is really useful for sniping, profitable live bets. Because, if you do see a long period of inactivity like this from him, it's not going to last long. All he's doing, taking a little bit of breather before he commits hard to another takedown attempt or something of that nature. But you can see big time inactivity in round 4, and obviously as the fight wears on, he gets worse. So like I say, that's a pattern that plays out in all of Pantoja's fights. As the fight wears on, he gets worse and worse. So with a guy like Pantoja, it's really important that he wins the early rounds, because if, for example, Asakura wins one of the first, second or third rounds, Pantoja's usually very bad in the 4th and 5th round, which means a guy like Asakura's got a great chance of winning the 4th and 5th. So Pantoja's one of these guys that does really need to put the early rounds in the bank, or he does put himself at pretty significant risk of losing a decision. So you've just seen some footage of Pantoja. He hits hard, he is aggressive on the feet when he lets his hands go. He's tough, he's durable, very, very good grappling control, strong MMA grappler. But there's issues with his output, there's issues with his cardio for sure. So how does he match up stylistically with Kai Asakura? And how likely is it that Asakura could cause an upset here and beat Pantoja, win the title in his debut? Well, Asakura is one of these guys that is reasonably skilled everywhere. So with how bad Pantoja's cardio is, you can't completely discredit Asakura here and say that he's got virtually no chance of winning this, because that's not the case. But what I would say is his takedown offense isn't good, and he does give up his back a lot in grappling positions, which is a death sentence against Pantoja, because Pantoja is one of these guys that has got super slick back takes even when very tired. We saw that in the Brandon Moreno fight. And he's the kind of guy that once he gets to your back, he just locks in the body triangle and he can keep that back control no matter how tired he is for however long there is left in the round. So what I want to do is show you a little bit of footage of Asakura so that you can kind of see what I mean with his takedown offense and ground game. I'm going to show you the Yuki Matoya fight. So if we bring this up, Yuki Matoya, let's get this going. Okay, so obviously this Matoya guy is nowhere near the level of grappler that Alexandre Pantoja is. I think we can all agree on that. Now, whenever you see a fight taking place in a ring, I don't want to be too harsh on a fighter when it comes to their takedown defense, because obviously the cage is a big part of defending takedowns in MMA. Because you can't use a ring to defend a takedown, right? You can't wall walk. You can't use the cage as a base to defend a takedown, anything like that. But what is concerning for me in this performance is how often Asakura instinctively gives his back up in grappling positions. Like I've said, that's already a death sentence if you do that against Pantoja. So Asakura is the guy in the red shorts. So you just see in this grappling position here, his opponent starts to move to take the back. And you can see that Asakura exposes his back to the extent that his opponent, Pantoja, is able to get one hook in on the left side. In a position like this, that would probably be more than enough for Pantoja to drag you to the ground and obtain full back control. So like I said, I don't want to make this breakdown super long, but that's just one example in this fight of him giving his back up. If we keep going, that's the first round. There's more grappling in the second. So again here, you can kind of see a situation where his opponent's got the body lock. And he moves and starts to take the back. And again, you know, I don't want to discredit this Yuki Pantoja guy. But if Asakura is giving his back up against a guy like this, he gives up a cheap takedown there. You can only imagine what someone like Pantoja is going to do to him, right? And again, here, Asakura does a pretty good job of working his way back up to his feet here, but the mistake that he makes again, or not necessarily a mistake, but what he does in order to get back up to his feet is that he gives his back up, watch. Just completely exposes his back. And again, we know if you do that against Pantoja, he'll just take you back and you're in a lot of trouble. So Pantoja keeps the body lock position here. And again, it's hard to defend a takedown against ropes, but you can see he's always giving his back up. You can see there all the way throughout defending this takedown, he's giving his back up. You expose your back like that to Pantoja, he'll take you back, no problem. No problem. And then he gets taken down, put in that Khabib type position, but he's just always giving his back up, man. Always giving his back up, and then he basically lands a flash KO out of nowhere in round 3. But again, even here at the beginning of round 3, watch. You know, 20 seconds in, you know, his instinct is to give his back up there. Look how he's giving his back up straight away. Giving his back up. You know, like I say, you do this against Pantoja, you're probably going to lose. You're probably going to lose. Pantoja's just going to drag you to the ground, get that body triangle locked in, just control you from back control. It's difficult, and then he just kind of lands a knee to the hook to the body, knee to the body there, and it's over. In a fight he was struggling in, to be fair. So yeah, I don't even think Asakura is the best Japanese fighter in the division. I think Tatsuro Taira smokes this guy. So yeah, most likely outcome for this fight, in my opinion. Pantoja probably looks pretty shit, probably looks pretty tired like he usually does, but with how Asakura tends to give up cheap takedowns, how he gives up his back a lot in grappling positions, I think just like the Brandon Moreno fight, just like the Brandon Royval fight, just like the Steve Erceg fight, I think Pantoja will be able to dig deep and use his MMA grappling, slick back takes, heavy grappling control to hit takedowns, you know, have a good amount of top control, back control against Asakura, and win enough rounds to retain his belt. That's how I see this going. I don't think he's going to look incredible. I don't think, you know, it's going to be one of those fights where, you know, he looks great or anything like that, but I think he'll get the job done. So for that reason, Pantoja is very tempting as a potential parlay leg this week. And like I say, the other big favourite that I do like is Dominic Reyes. I'd be very, very surprised if he lost. I think this is going to be one of those you all must have forgot fights this week where Reyes suffered a little bit of bad luck with some flash knockouts and stuff in his career, which has certainly set him back since winning a decision against John Jones, essentially. The judges got that fight wrong. But I think Smith is totally shot, and Reyes is better than him everywhere. So strongly considering a parlay on Pantoja versus Reyes. Haven't decided yet if I'm going to pull the trigger. Let me know what you think in Discord or in the comments below of that, or what you think about that bet though, because I'm very tempted to lock it in. Now in terms of the over-under, It is a difficult one because my instinct is that this fight will go over 2.5 rounds. And I'm also very tempted to place the over 2.5 rounds on this fight. The reason being, if we look at Pantoja's record, we can see that he doesn't finish guys very often. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of his last 7 fights have gone to a decision. Granted, they have been against some of the best fighters in the world. But at the same time, even if you go a bit further back in his career, his early UFC days, he frequently fought to decisions. And when you look at Pantoja's fighting style these days, he is one of these guys that does favour position over submission. He's not super aggressive with submitting his opponents on the ground. He prefers to just kind of obtain dominant positions, run the clock down and control them. So I am very tempted to bet over 2.5 rounds on this fight, because I think what we're most likely going to get is Pantoja just kind of getting to Asakura's back and controlling him, getting into top position and controlling him, and outside of that, long periods of inactivity where he likes to pace himself. Of course, the risk factor associated with betting over 2.5 rounds on a fight like this is that we don't really know what Asakura's level is on the ground. So if you look at his record, he's only fought a relatively low level of a grappler, and while he hasn't been submitted ever, he's never been submitted in his entire career, he's also never competed against a grappler anywhere near the level of Pantoja. So while Asakura looks like a skilled enough grappler to defend himself on the ground, for all we know, when these two mix it up in the cage on Saturday night, Pantoja could just be a completely different level on the ground, and as a result, Asakura just gets absolutely drowned on the ground and submitted or mounted and smashed, relatively quickly. It's difficult to say, but the over 2.5 rounds is pretty damn tempting. Again, let me know what you think of that bet. I might lock it in. I might pull the trigger. It's a bit of a gamble, but I do feel the odds are decent enough to bet on Asakura to at least be able to defend himself from back control. And look, if you get a guy that, you'd think that for someone like Asakura that gives his back up as much as he does, you'd think he'd be pretty used to having to defend rear naked chokes, right? So I'd imagine in training he's having to defend himself against rear naked chokes all the time with how much he gives his back up. But obviously Pantoja is a different level. Okay, so in terms of the prop bets, I do think the most likely outcome is Pantoja by decision. I don't love the odds. 25 minutes is a long time. Failing that, the only one I would consider would be Pantoja inside the distance. Odds are absolutely terrible. So yeah, I wouldn't personally bet either of those props. The odds are a bit shit, but if you really want to place a prop to make watching the fight more interesting, I mean, personally I would say go for over 2.5 rounds. But outside of that, if those odds aren't tempting enough for you, you want to mix it up, gamble a little bit, Pantoja by decision is probably the way to go, but I don't think the odds are particularly good. So hope you found that useful. Why did I close that down? Let's move on to the next fight, which is going to be Garry versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Rakhmonov is the favourite at average odds of about 1.25, which is going to be minus 400 for an implied probability of 80%. Take a look at the odds on Garry. He's around an average of 3.90, which is going to be plus 290 for an implied probability of 26%. So Rakhmonov, 30 years old, 6'1" with a 77-inch reach. Garry, 27 years old, 6'3" with a 74-inch reach. So a little bit of a reach advantage there for Rakhmonov. Very, very nice. So I personally believe that Rakhmonov is the best welterweight in the division, and not by a little bit either. I think Rakhmonov is significantly better than any other welterweight in the division, and that includes Chimaev. Obviously Chimaev bounces around between welterweight and middleweight, but personally I think Chimaev's gas tank in 5-rounders is going to be an issue. Rakhmonov's cardios look great in the fights that have gone deep. The Jeff Neal fight, which went into the 3rd round, was contested at a pretty high pace. Shavkat's cardio looked great. That's why I think Rakhmonov is the best welterweight in the world, and I don't think anyone really comes close. I think he's the uncrowned king, and it's only a matter of time before he takes the belt. So based on that, in my opinion, he is a lot better than Ian Garry everywhere. We know for sure he's a significantly better MMA grappler. And from my perspective, he may not be as technical as Garry on the feet. He might not move as well, but he hits a lot harder. And when you add in his reasonably good striking with his extremely high level MMA grappling, just as a package, he's a much more dangerous proposition to deal with than Ian Garry. So this is a very, very good stylistic matchup for Rakhmonov. If you are going to bet him this weekend, I think the only risk factor with Rakhmonov is that he has shown a bit of a tendency to play with his food and perhaps not grapple as much as I would like him to. Played with his food a little bit against Stephen Thompson. Played with his food quite a lot actually against Jeff Neal, where he just chose to stand and bang for 3 rounds. But it did give us a bit of insight into his chin. It did give us a bit of insight into his cardio as well. And he passed both tests with flying colours because he ate some big shots from Jeff and also looked pretty good in the 3rd round. I mean, good enough to get a late submission, which isn't easy against a tough guy like Jeff Neal, especially deep in the fight where both guys are sweaty and Rakhmonov has no doubt exerted a lot of energy in that fight. Would be feeling pretty tired. So yeah, pretty easy fight for Rakhmonov. I think the only way he loses this if something crazy happens is in the form of a flash KO, which is unlikely. He showed this against Jeff Neal. He's got a great chin. Or if he just kind of plays with his foot and fucks about and tries to win a kickboxing match and gets outpointed, when we know if he commits hard to his grappling, nobody in the division stops him, and that includes Chimaev, because Chimaev's cardio is unfortunately garbage, or fortunately, depending on which way you lean politically. I mean, Chimaev probably deserves bad things happening in his career due to his links with war criminals in Chechnya, but I don't really have an opinion on that. I just think that Rakhmonov is the king at 170, and it's only a matter of time before he wins the belt. So if we take a look at the over-under on this one, the over-under is a difficult one to pick because we haven't seen Ian Garry face a high-level grappler. If you look at his record, Mike Page, striker; Jeff Neal, striker; Magny, terrible grappling; Daniel Rodriguez, striker; Keenan Song, striker; Gabe Green, striker; Darian Weeks, striker; Jordan Williams, bit of everything, but then he's in Cage Warriors, so you get the idea. Ian Garry could be like a Conor McGregor, where he has no takedown offense and no ground game, and the first time he runs into a high-level grappler, he's just going to get taken down easily and mauled. It's entirely possible. I don't think that'll be the case with Garry because he's athletic, he's got good balance, he's trained at some really good gyms in the United States for a while. He's obviously now in Brazil, but he did spend a decent amount of time training at some good American gyms. So his takedown offense, ground game is probably all right, but this could easily be one of those fights where an Irish striker just gets taken down, absolutely mauled and exposed a bit. It's entirely possible. So for that reason, it's difficult to kind of pick on the over 2.5 rounds or under, because if Garry's takedown offense and ground game is reasonably good to the point where if he gets taken down he can defend himself, then I do like the over 2.5 rounds, because I think Shavkat has shown himself to be more of a volume striker than just one shot KO nightmare. But on the ground he's extremely dangerous. His submission game is very dangerous. His grappling control is very dangerous. So without knowing how well Garry's going to defend himself on the ground, the over-under is quite kind of a difficult one to predict. In terms of the props, Rakhmonov inside the distance, odds terrible. Rakhmonov win by decision, not that much better. I don't like the props on that one. I would give them a miss. Now let's break down the next fight on this card, a rematch between Alexander Volkov and Cyril Bongamin Gane. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Gane is the favourite at average odds of about 1.27, which is going to be minus 175 for an implied probability of 64%. If we take a look at the odds on Volkov, he's around an average of 3.90, which is going to be plus 290 for an implied probability of 26%. So Gane is 34 years old, 6'4", with an 81-inch reach. You know what's interesting about Gane? Gane came into the UFC as like this young, up-and-coming, inexperienced prospect. It's kind of like a Francis Ngannou understudy. because they're obviously training together in Paris. But he's already 34. He's already getting pretty old. I know he hasn't had many fights, 14 pro fights. He's crazy athletic. I know heavyweights tend to have longer careers, and 34 years old isn't particularly old for a heavyweight. I just thought he was younger than that. Time flies, right? Time fucking flies, man. Already 34. Another 2-3 years, he'll be in his late 30s, and we'll be talking about a potential decline in Mr. Gane. Crazy times. But Volkov has been around a long time. He's had a hell of a lot more fights, almost 4 or 5 times the number of fights. 48 pro fights. He's 36 years old, 6'7" with an 80-inch reach. So both guys have about the same wingspan. Very different body types. Gane more muscular, more compact. Volkov longer and taller, although Volkov has bulked up a lot since moving to the United States to train full time. But yeah, not a massive age difference between these two, but in terms of miles on the clock, they're worlds apart, right? And when we talk about age, I always use the example of cars where, if you have a 1-year-old car with 100,000 miles on the clock, or a 10-year-old car with 1,000 miles on the clock, the 10-year-old car is probably going to be a lot more reliable than the 1-year-old car, just because it's had less mileage, less wear and tear, on the engine, the components, all that kind of thing. And when you look at Gane, only 14 pro fights. Volkov's been in a lot of wars. He's been knocked out a bunch of times back in his Bellator days. Probably trains very hard. Loves to throw down. Volkov is one of those guys with almost 50 pro fights that you would imagine is going to be declining a lot at this stage in his career. He hasn't really shown many signs of it, to be fair. He's still tough, still durable. Chin is still there. If anything, he's improved a little bit in recent years. But 48 fights, that's a lot of fights. That's a lot of fights, and you'd expect him to catch up with a guy like this pretty soon. But he's on a hell of a winning run, and he's beaten some tough opponents as well. Winning a decision against Pavlovich is no picnic. And so, Volkov's not an easy fight for anyone. Although, having said that, this is obviously a rematch, and Gane won their first fight all the way back in 2021 relatively easily. And Gane's a lot better now than he was back in 2021. In terms of how these two match up stylistically, both have got great cardio for heavyweights, so that shouldn't come into it. And they're both primarily strikers, so you'd expect this to be a stand-up fight. Their first fight was a stand-up fight. If their first fight is anything to go by, Gane will just come forward, take control of the centre of the octagon, just kind of chip away at Volkov on the feet and outpoint him. He never really had Volkov in much trouble. He just outpointed him. Volkov couldn't really compete with Gane on the feet. It wasn't like a crazy dominant performance from Gane, but he was never in trouble, and Volkov just couldn't build any momentum in the fight, and Gane would just chip away at him from a safe distance, played it safe, won a very comfortable decision. Obviously, when we're looking at fights like this, you've always got to consider what the odds are and the risk to reward ratio you would get for betting either fighter, right? And when we look at the odds on Gane, big favourite, he won their first fight relatively comfortably. Volkov's a lot older, should be declining. It's very, very likely that Gane wins this weekend. There's no doubt about that. But the reason why I pick guys like Dominic Reyes over someone like Cyril Gane when I'm talking about finding, potential big favourites to throw into parlays is because in order to bet on, a favourite in the odds range that we see Dominic Reyes and Cyril Gane, they have to have, in my mind, virtually no way to lose. Because if you look at the implied probability on Gane's odds, they come out at about 79%. Which means to get any value on Gane here, you've got to cap him in that 83-85% range. And that isn't an easy thing to do in a cage fight to the death, especially not a heavyweight fight where it only takes one shot to land to knock someone out. Now, yes, granted, Volkov's not a power puncher. Gane's excellent defensively to the extent that Gane has never been knocked out. Even went the distance with Francis Ngannou when Ngannou was at his scariest. However, anything can happen in MMA. My biggest concern for Gane, my biggest concern for betting Gane in this odds range would be his takedown defense and ground game. We've seen in the John Jones fight, we've seen in the Francis Ngannou fight, that Gane's takedown offense isn't the best. He is a very low level on the ground. So while Volkov also isn't the best on the ground and never tries to take his opponents down, you never know if he wants to switch things up and get spicy this weekend. And if the fight did go to the ground, I would give Volkov the advantage so long as he was not on his back, because Volkov's pretty fucking weak off his back, to be fair. But yeah, Gane's not the kind of guy I would be betting as a big favourite here. So in terms of the over-under, very likely this fight goes deep. It's very rare that you will see steep favourite odds like this on a heavyweight fight to go to decision. In fact, I don't know if I've ever seen odds that steep on a heavyweight fight to go to decision. That's the kind of odds you'd see on a strawweight fight to go to a decision. But both these guys are decisionators in the heavyweight division. Neither of them are particularly dangerous, and they're both tough and well-rounded. If you look at Gane's record, frequently fights to a decision. If you look at Volkov's, you're going to see the same thing. Although not so much in recent years, but styles make fights, and these two are tough, well-rounded, difficult to finish. So with it taking two to tango, this fight probably goes to a decision. Now in terms of props, the only prop I would consider would be Cyril Gane by decision, but I would imagine the odds are dreadful on that. They are. So I would give that a miss. So now let's break down one of the most interesting fights on the card, which is going to be Bryce Mitchell against Gracie. Now, even though Bryce Mitchell is he the biggest favourite on the card? He's not quite. Chase Hooper's a bigger favourite, but odds of 1.13, still pretty fucking steep. Odds of 1.13 on Bryce Mitchell, which is minus 769. Give him an implied probability of 89%, which means in order to get any value on Mr. Mitchell, you'd have to give him more than a 90% chance of winning, 92-93% of the time, which in a cage fight to the death is a very, very difficult thing to do. Very difficult. And I personally feel that Gracie, out of all the big favourites on this card, out of all the big underdogs on this card, when you look at Asakura, you look at Garry, you look at Volkov, you got Gracie, you got Smith, you've got Clay Guida, and you've got Lucas Bresky. Of all those underdogs, there are big underdogs. I think the guy most likely to win this weekend is Gracie. And I think we've got a bit of wiki capping going on with this fight, because obviously Gracie has looked terrible. He's looked absolutely terrible in his first two fights in the UFC. However, the reason why he's looked terrible is because he hasn't been able to get Cub Swanson and Charles Jourdain to the ground. So they've kept the fight standing, and they've put on a striking clinic and made him look extremely bad. What's interesting about this fight is that Gracie is a very high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, and Bryce Mitchell's primarily a grappler as well. So he may not need to get this fight to the ground, right? Because Gracie's one of these guys that has high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but not the best MMA grappling, not the best offensive wrestling. In many ways, he's got the problem that Mackenzie Dern's got, in that he's got this high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he doesn't have the wrestling to get his opponent to the ground. So is Bryce Mitchell the kind of guy that is going to come in, follow the blueprint that Charles Jourdain and Cub Swanson wrote, and stay really disciplined and treat the ground like lava, and use his grappling in reverse to keep the fight standing and just kind of chip away at Gracie on the feet and win a nice comfortable stand-up fight? Or is Mitchell going to be tempted to engage in grappling with Gracie, go to the ground, and potentially be put in some pretty bad positions? I'm not so sure, but that's what makes this such an interesting fight for me, because on the feet we know Mitchell's got the advantage. Gracie's striking is obviously pretty low level, but the thing about Gracie is he is tough. We've seen him take a lot of damage in the Jourdain and Swanson fights, and he's tough enough to continue to come forward. He reminds me a little bit of Brian Ortega in that way, who also comes from the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu system. Gracie's tough enough to just keep coming forward, keep hunting for that takedown, no matter what his opponents throw at him. And that's interesting to me, because Bryce Mitchell's one of these guys that does fade a lot in fights. He does tire out. So I do think that Gracie's constant forward pressure that we saw him put on Swanson and Jourdain could wear Mitchell down, which will make it more likely that Mitchell would shoot a takedown to alleviate the pressure he's under on the feet. Or, maybe try and take Gracie down to alleviate the pressure, or, ultimately get dragged into grappling exchanges if he doesn't like the forward pressure that Gracie's putting on him. And let's be honest, Bryce Mitchell's not the most technical striker. Is he a better striker than Gracie? Yes. My sister is probably a better striker than Kron Gracie. However, it still doesn't change the fact that the Mitchell's not comfortable on the feet. So when we look at, what happens if this fight were to go to the ground, it is a tough one for me because I think Bryce Mitchell's ground game is utterly devastating. His offensive wrestling's great. His grappling control's great. He's got some of the slickest back takes in the game, probably the best back takes in the division. He's an absolute nightmare. And just because Kron has got Gracie as his surname doesn't necessarily mean that he is going to be a better MMA grappler than Bryce Mitchell. The thing that really stands out for me with Bryce Mitchell's ground game is that he has crushing grappling control. Absolutely crushing grappling control. And so, is Kron Gracie going to be able to deal with that? Or is Bryce Mitchell going to be able to big brother him on the ground with that physicality, that strength? Or will Gracie have superior technique, know how to deal with Bryce on the ground, win some scrambles, put him in some bad positions? And also, how will Bryce Mitchell's cardio hold up? If Gracie puts him in some bad positions on the ground, maybe puts him on his back, maybe takes his back, because we know that Mitchell does have a tendency to fade in fights. This is a very interesting fight. This is one of those fights where, for me, there's a lot of risk here with Bryce Mitchell. And while it's possible that Bryce Mitchell could just completely dominate Gracie and outclass him both standing up and on the ground, the fact that Kron Gracie is tough and a cardio machine, and the fact that Mitchell slows a lot, makes me think this one could get interesting. Now, from a pre-fight betting point of view, Kron Gracie is very tempting at these odds because he is, like I say, a very, very big underdog. But the problem with fights like this is we don't really know what game plan and strategy Bryce Mitchell is going to use, and we also don't know how Kron Gracie's ground game matches up with Bryce Mitchell, right? There's two big unanswered questions which are going to have a big influence on how this fight plays out. Because Bryce Mitchell could go out this weekend, employ the same game plan that Jordan and Swanson used, use his MMA grappling in reverse to keep the fight standing and outclass Gracie on the feet. If he does that, then your potential bet on Kron Gracie is going to be dead in the water, and Mitchell's probably going to win pretty easily. At the same time, at the end of the day, Mitchell's ground game is incredible. So if the fight goes to the ground, we don't know. Kron Gracie might just get big brothered and dominated. And again, if you were to bet on Kron Gracie, in that instance, your money would be dead in the water. So there is a lot of risk associated with betting Gracie. And at these odds, I think you'd be insane for betting on Bryce Mitchell. But this kind of fight is absolutely perfect for live betting, because we've got so much experience when it comes to reading grappling positions, grappling exchanges, and understanding MMA grappling on a very deep level, that as soon as these two start mixing it up on the ground, very quickly, within 20 to 30 seconds, we're going to get a strong read on how this fight is likely to develop and play out as the matchup progresses. And we've already said, at this point, we make a profit most weeks on the UFC. Over the long term, we make a profit on approximately 70% of UFC events. We absolutely crush it. And every time we have a dip, we always follow it up with a big winning run. And we're currently in the process of doing this right now after the most recent dip. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to play a little clip for you of a recent live bet that we've won, so you can kind of see how things work, how we do things, so you can see the opportunity there is live betting with me. So if you're not in my live betting group, I strongly recommend giving it a try. If you watch every UFC event live, it's an absolute no-brainer. This is not made up. This is not bullshit. I've been here for years. We make a profit on approximately 70% of UFC events. So if you join me, you've literally got nothing to lose if you watch the UFC events live, because essentially you're going to be making money while you watch the fights. So check out this live bet we won recently, and if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to hit me up. It's a cash cow. We're going to make a lot of money over the next year. Give it a try. All right, so into this next one, boys. This is an interesting fight because Romios is quite a big favourite, but he doesn't look very good in his past fights. Very, very low-level fighter. We know Gaston Bolaños has got a background in traditional kickboxing. He's a very technical striker, cardio for days, tough as nails. Very, very dangerous striker. Um, the issue with Bolaños is because he comes from a traditional kickboxing background, his takedown defense is pretty bad and he's pretty weak off his back. And Romeus does grapple a lot. However, Romeus isn't the best MMA grappler. And so, because of that, Bolaños definitely a live underdog here. And this is one of the more interesting fights from a live betting point of view. So, obviously, live betting strategy is Bolaños needs to keep the fight standing. So early on, we'll be paying close attention to how his takedown defense looks, if he's able to work his way back up to his feet quickly after being taken down. Obviously, Romeos' debut as well. So he's more likely to slow than Bolaños, who does have good cardio. So the good news is, because Romeos is so outgunned on the feet, he should be forced to grapple pretty early, which will give us a lot of information on how likely it is that Bolaños is going to be able to keep this fight standing. So here we go. Bolaños is chipping away at Romeus on the feet. Only going to be a matter of time before we get another takedown attempt from Romeus, though. Bolaños can be quite weak off his back. Bolaños is striking looking very sharp here, although he's wide open to that power left hand from Romeus. Oh, wow. Late knockdown from Romeus. So a strong end to the round from Romeus. It looked to me like Bolaños just lost his foot in there, but it's possible that that will be counted as a knockdown. We'll have to see a replay of it. There's a bit of a cut above Romeus's right eye. So interesting first round. Bolaños did give up a cheap takedown, straight into side control. With that, guys, I'm going to recommend a 1 unit bet on Bolaños at odds of 1.83. That's 1 unit Bolaños, 1.83. That's 1 unit Bolaños, 1.83. 1 unit Bolaños, 1.83. You guys can hear me, yeah? You guys hear me? Let me know if you can hear me, guys. 1 unit Bolaños. Yeah, 1 unit Bolaños, guys. So the reasoning for this bet is I think there's a pretty good chance that Romeus is going to adrenaline dump here. He's been struggling to get the takedown and keep Bolaños down. Bolaños is relatively scrambly at times anyway. Bolaños is outstriking Romeus. Romeus has got damage above the right eye. Towards the end of that round, Romeus was starting to look tired, indicating to me that he is starting to fade a little bit. So with this being Romeus' debut, we know Bolaños' cardio is good. Romeus himself is quite weak off his back. We saw a bit of that in round one. In on a takedown again here. He gets it. Bolaños immediately back up to his feet. And this is the kind of thing that will tire a guy like Romeus out. He's exerting a lot of energy here on these takedowns to, at the moment, not achieve very much. Bolaños trying to break the grip of Romeus and turn into him. Romeus looking to take the back. We don't want to see Romeus go to the body triangle here. His legs are quite short. There he goes. He goes to the body triangle. Long time left to go in the round, but obviously bad position for Bolaños to find himself in early. Like I say, Bolaños did outstrike Romeus in round one, but it was a bad end of the round. I actually think he lost his footing. I don't think it was a knockdown, but the judges might score it as a knockdown. Shame that Bolaños found himself in this position, because to have a feeling Romeus would fade very hard in this round based on all the energy he exerted with those takedown attempts. But Romeus does have short legs, so it won't be easy for him to keep this body triangle. So you can see Romeus has opened his body triangle up now. And so Bolaños just needs to start pivoting to his right,
giving his back up now. Bolaños just needs to explode to his left. These hooks are very loose. Bolaños just needs to commit. These hooks are super loose. Just needs to commit to his left. He can wind up on top. Bolaños is so close to being out of trouble here. He just needs to explode out of here. Bolaños is 12-6 elbows, vicious from Bolaños, and Bolaños is back up. Now Romeus will likely be pretty tired after all those takedown attempts and a bit of an adrenaline dump. Here we go. Romeus looking real tired here. 12-6 elbows from Bolaños. This round is still stealable if Bolaños can get big damage off. Going to the knees, the elbows. Obviously, Romeus had a big period of back control, but damage in the business end of the round can outscore that. Nice elbow on the inside from Bolaños. And Romeus gives up a takedown. Romeus is exhausted here, guys. Romeus is exhausted here. I had a feeling he would adrenaline dump after committing so much energy to the takedowns. And that's what we're seeing at the moment. Bolaños stealing this round. Could we snipe a winner tonight, guys? Could we snipe a winner? Could we snipe it? Could we snipe a winner, guys? Get a nice clean profit here. It's possible Bolaños is up 2. At worst, it's 1 round apiece. So big end of the round for Bolaños. It's at worst 1 round apiece. Bolaños definitely stole that round, and we know that Bolaños is a cardio machine, whereas Romeus in his debut after exerting that much energy on takedowns has likely adrenaline dumped. Guys, can you hear me okay? The chat is real quiet. You guys all good? It's a nice one, boys. Nice one, nice one, nice one. Come on, boys. Can Bolaños get this over the line for us? With how difficult tonight's card has been, if we keep this winning streak going by sniping another profit tonight, it is bullish times. Bullish times. So Romeus will likely be pretty tired after all of that grappling in his debut. Like I say, Romeus did fade in his other fights. So as soon as we saw Bolaños looking scrambly on the ground, Romeus taking those big deep breaths towards the end of round 1, especially when you throw into the mix the fact that he kind of got a late knockdown, which can also lead to an adrenaline dump in a fight. Hopefully Bolaños can get this over the line for us, though. We know he's mean, nasty, aggressive, hits hard, great cardio, but could be 1 apiece. Needs to get the job done in round 3. Can't afford to give up a cheap takedown, get his back taken, and get caught in another body triangle. But the problem with Romeus' body triangles is because his legs are short, it is difficult for him to hold body triangles for a long period of time. But he is trying to take the back of Bolaños again here now. It's an awkward position Bolaños has found himself in. 50-50 position. Bolaños has got to pivot into Romeus. Romeus got to try and sneak out, take the back. Awkward position. Romeus trying to sneak out the back. Bolaños trying to free his legs. Awkward 50-50 position. Bolaños does defend his back, but does also give up a takedown in the middle of the octagon. So Bolaños finds himself in a bad position here. Bolaños with a triangle attempt off his back. The 12-6 elbows as well. Bolaños needs to use this armbar attempt to try and scramble back up to his feet, though, because again, Romeos likely had the energy for this grappling because he had a minute to recover in between rounds. If Bolaños can get back up to his feet, Romeos will likely be too tired to take him down. Bolaños just cannot work out of this position. Bolaños crawls over to the cage. Can he turn into Romeos and break his grip here? So Bolaños turns into Romeos and gets a takedown. Very, very nice. Great work from Bolaños to win that scramble. And again, that just comes down to energy. There's no doubt that Romeos is the better grappler. But when both guys are tired, Bolaños just got that energy just to push through and win those 50-50 positions, those scrambles. Oh, I thought he was going to throw an illegal knee there. Come on, Bolaños. Get this over the line for us, mate. Get this over the line for us, mate. Romeos in on another takedown. Double underhooks for Bolaños, but Bolaños' takedown defense has not been great in the fight so far. He does get double unders. He defends it. Very, very nice. Come on, Bolaños. Get this over the line for us, mate. If we could snipe it. Oh, he gets a takedown. Nice work, Bolaños. Boys, if we could snipe a profit tonight on a card as tough as this, to say that we are on a hot streak right now would be an understatement. This would take us to 8-2 on our last 10 bets if Bolaños can get this over the line. Come on, Bolaños. Get this over the line for us. Come on, Bolaños. Come on, boys. Orlando City, get the job done. Oh, yes. You'll love to see it, boys. Can we hit the double kill? It has been a while since we hit the double kill. Can we get the double kill? The UFC and the MLS simultaneously. Oh, no. But Bolaños has given up a cheap takedown with 40 seconds left to go in the third round. Out of nowhere. But he pushes off. Up, 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 up. Do you know what? I don't think guard will be enough for Romeos to win this round. I think Bolaños will win this round if the fight stays in this position. Could be wrong, but Bolaños has done a decent amount of damage in this round. He's active off his back with the elbows. The Vegas judges are pretty good. And outside of this late takedown, Bolaños has won this round. So I think we're going to be all right here, boys, with this Bolaños bet. Something tells me we're going to be all right as he hammers Romeos with the elbows off his back. This should be 29-28 Bolaños at worst. I don't think that takedown is enough to steal the round for Romeos. Come on, boys. If we can snipe a profit on the UFC tonight on a card as tough as this, you know we are the best in the world of what we do. We do not fuck around. We are the best in the world, the greatest of all time. And if we can hit a double kill on the UFC and football within a 15-minute period, come on, let's go for the double kill here, boys. Let's go for the double kill. This should be 29-28 Bolaños. 30-27 is possible if you take out the late knockdown, where to me personally it looked like Bolaños lost his footing, but I didn't watch a replay of it because I was too busy focused on the penalty situation with Orlando. And don't forget, boys, we got another MLS game later on. Inter Miami versus Atlanta United should be a great one. Oh, in fact, it's on right now. I need to switch over. I completely forgot that the Miami game had already started. Yeah, the Miami game. Oh, actually, they do weird shit in the MLS. Like they delay start times and stuff of games so that you can watch them. Like they do mad things. I'm not mad at it. I quite like that. All right, come on, boys. Come on, judges, say his name. This is the type of decision the judges will get wrong, which is my only concern. But Bolaños should take this. Vegas judges are usually pretty good. More damage. Won the majority of those grappling positions in round 3. A late takedown shouldn't be enough. Come on, boys. We can snipe the profit on this card. That will be one hell of a night's work on a card as tough as this. Come on, boys. Say his name. Come on, boys. Say his name. Can't believe we're sweating this one. 30-27. It's got to be Bolaños. Say his name. Come on, boys. Let's go. Yo, guys, who's the best in the world at doing this shit? Who is the best in the world? Isn't it funny how for 10 fucking years we made a profit on 70% of events in UFC live betting? Then for a little while things got weird and we were like, what the fuck is going on here? And then split decision with the fucking genius move helped us fix the problem. And oh look, suddenly we're back to making a profit on 70% of UFC events again. And you know how you know that times have changed and we are going to make so much money over the next year? When we were experiencing all those latency issues, we had no chance of making a profit on a shitty card like this. We'd have to pass on all the fights and pray we got something decent to bet next week. The game has changed. Now when we get shitty events, we still snipe the one or two the 1 or 2 bets. We still make the little profit here and there to move the change, to keep the account balances and the bankrolls compounding upward. And this is how you turn small amounts of money into big amounts of money. Consecutive winners, high win rates. And boys, I am telling you right now, the next year is going to be phenomenal for us. We're going to do big things on the UFC. As always, we're now back to our 70% win rate. So you can expect to make profits most weeks. And wait until you see what I'm going to do the rest of the season on football too. 2025 is going to be massive for us, boys. We suffered for most of 2024. We suffered bad. Wait until you see what I'm going to do next year. So, boys, sniping a cheeky little profit there. And the good news is, we've still got more fights still to come. So we can add to it on a tough night like this and turn water into wine. And don't forget, for those of you that like a bit of Quake or Unreal Tournament, double kill, boys. Double kill. Double kill. It's been a while since we had a double kill. Double kill. We love it. We love it. All right, boys, we're back. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back just in time for the next one.
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. Now back to the Gracie versus Bryce Mitchell fight. Like I say, these kind of fights, difficult for pre-fight betting, but a matchup like this, it's going to be perfect for live. And so rather than putting my money in a lot of danger and gambling on this one when it comes to pre-fight betting, I just prefer to save fights like this for live betting. If we miss an opportunity to make some money, so be it. But the reason why we've been able to make so much money over the years and consistently grind these profits out is because we're very protective of our bankroll, protective of our account balances, and we only put our money in situations where we know we can either overwhelmingly stack the odds in our favour or get our money into positions where our fighter or our football team has a very, very, very good chance of coming through for us. So that's how I see this matchup. Now, in terms of the over-under on this one, I do think the fight is very likely to go to a decision. The reason being, I don't think the fight will end standing simply because Gracie is not a dangerous striker at all. He's a volume striker and quite low level at that. Plus, we know Bryce Mitchell's incredibly tough. Look at the damage that he took against Dan Ige. I don't see Bryce Mitchell finishing Gracie on the feet because Mitchell's not a particularly dangerous striker, and Gracie has shown against Jordan and Swanson that he's tough as nails and he could take a shot and there's no quitting him. And then on the ground, you would think that both guys are at such a high level on the ground that even though one guy might have the edge in terms of grappling control, either of them getting a submission would be very difficult because you'd think they do a pretty good job of defending themselves in grappling positions on the ground. So, yeah, I think this fight's pretty likely to go to a decision, but I wouldn't bet it at the steep favourite odds. Now, in terms of the props, bets, Mitchell by decision. Odds are terrible. Great. I mean, why would you bet Gracie by decision? You know what? In terms of props, if you really want to bet this fight to make watching him more interesting, don't get greedy. Just take a gamble on Gracie moneyline. I think this is a very interesting fight, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing how it plays out live. Could this be a moth to the bug zapper fight, where Bryce Mitchell's the moth and he flies right all into that bug zapper named Chrome Gracie? Will it be the fly flying into the spider's web? Will Chrome Gracie finally get a guy that will want to mix it up on the ground with him in the UFC? And if that happens, can Gracie take advantage of it? We're going to find out. It's a great fight for live betting, difficult for pre-fight betting, but hopefully no matter what happens Saturday night, we can profit from it. Now let's break down one of the most interesting fights on the card, and potentially one of the most competitive fights as well. It is Choi versus Nate Landwehr. And what I'm also going to do is show a little bit of footage on this one to let you guys know what the fuck is up with these two geezers. Alright, so in terms of how these two match up, in terms of the odds, they're both in the even money odds range. And over the last few days, or in fact over the last month, Choi's odds have been steadily declining, which I do get. I'm very tempted to bet Choi myself. I do think this is a good stylistic matchup for Choi. So he's the underdog at average odds of about 2.15, which is going to be plus 115 for an implied probability of 47%. And if we take a look at the odds on his opponent Landwehr, he's around an average of 1.73, which is going to be minus 137 for an implied probability of 58%. So Choi is 33 years old, and he's another one like Cyril Gane, man. Time's moving fast. I'm 40 years old now, boys. You young whippersnappers watching this are probably like, oh, yeah, Choi's fucking old, man. Cyril Gane's old. Obviously, they're old. But for me, I've been watching this sport for 20 years. It wasn't that long ago that Choi, was a young guy in his early 20s coming into the UFC, and people were talking about him as a potential future champion. So for a dinosaur like me, been watching the UFC for over 20 years now, 40 years old, seeing Choi approaching his mid-30s, wow, that's fucking crazy, man. He's not a young, hungry bull anymore. But he is 5'10", with a 70-inch reach, which means he's about the same size as Nate the Train. You can see that Landwehr is 36 years old, which, to be fair, is quite old for the division. These two boys are featherweights, and Landwehr is going to be 37 in June. So Landwehr, 23 pro fights, taken a lot of damage in his career. He's been in a lot of wars. Landwehr is going to be one of these guys who will probably start to decline pretty hard soon. And there are some clues in some of his recent fights that perhaps that decline has already begun. So in terms of how these two match up from a stylistic point of view, both these guys like to stand and bang. They both like to stand and strike. They both love 50 Gs, baby. They're both bonus machines. And pretty good chance these guys are going to go toe-to-toe, get into some big exchanges, try and knock each other out, right? So it's probably going to be a stand-up fight. So we'll focus on striking in a moment. Let's tick grappling off. Let's cover grappling, and then we can really get into the weeds and talk about how these two match up when it comes to striking. So in terms of grappling, Choi is a significantly better MMA grappler than Nate Landwehr. Got decent offensive wrestling, decent technical ground game, decent grappling control, and we know that Landwehr does have a tendency to give up cheap takedowns. He's a little bit weak off his back. Having said that, Landwehr is an absolute dog, and we have seen him employ some grappling in some of his fights over the last few years. And my one criticism of Choi is that he takes a little bit too long to work out of bad positions on the ground, whereas Landwehr, far more active on the ground, shows far more urgency. So while Choi is the better grappler out of the two, if this fight were to go to the ground, Landwehr's work rate could even things up a little bit. I don't see this fight going to the ground, so that's probably irrelevant. But if it did go to the ground, Choi is the more technical grappler out of the two. But this should be a stand-up fight. This should be chaos. This should be war. This one should have either 50 Gs, baby, quick 50-second knockout, or it should be, knockdown, drag-out, fight of the night, contender war. Either way, it's a great fight. And like I say, this is probably the best fight on the card, to be fair. So, how do these two match up when it comes to striking? Well, I'd be very surprised if this one went the distance. Straight away, let's look at the odds on that. So I can only imagine. Ooh, fight doesn't go to decision. 1.50. That's a pretty good bet in my opinion. That's a pretty good bet. That is a pretty good bet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10 of Doo-Ho Choi's last 12 have ended inside the distance. And with Landwehr, 4 of his last 6. Wow, that is a decent bet. I assumed that would be big favourite odds. Fight doesn't go to decision. I like that a lot. I like that a lot. The reason why I like this fight not to go to decision is because styles make fights. And when you look at the styles of these two, not only are they both incredibly dangerous, but they are both incredibly susceptible to being knocked out because of how reckless they are. So both these guys love to stand in front of their opponents and get into big exchanges and stand and bang. They love it. And they're both wide open to getting knocked out. Now, I'm going to show you some footage of Nate, which I think will go some way towards showing you why I like this fight to end inside the distance. But wow, that's a pretty good bet. So that's a pretty good bet. I'll almost certainly be betting that. We'll pop it in the Discord in a bit. Wow, that's a pretty good bet. So yeah, the way that I see this fight going is these two are going to get into some big exchanges. They're both very hittable because neither of them like to take a backward step. And they're both going to eat bombs. And they've both got a habit of getting rocked, wobbled, and dropped in fights. And they both have true legit knockout power. So I just think someone's going to get knocked out here. I think it's more likely to be Landwehr because he's older, he's taken more damage, he's going to be declining, he's worse defensively. His reflexes aren't as good as Choi's. He's not as good at reading his opponent as Choi is. Choi's better defensively. So I think Landwehr is more likely to get knocked out. But ultimately, either of these guys could get sent to the Shadow Realm. What I'm going to do is play you a little bit of footage of Landwehr so you can kind of see how reckless he is. Now, don't get me wrong. He is a tough fucker. Not easy to knock him out. He's got that kill or be killed style. But he's just so damn reckless. So this is the Jamal Emmers fight. What I want you to do is just pay attention to how vulnerable he is in these exchanges. So Landwehr is one of these guys that wants to come forward and get into a firefight with everyone. But he doesn't move his head and he doesn't read his opponents very well, which means he's a sitting duck. Like you can see him in this position, right? Jamal Emmers just kind of wailing on him. And just what I want you to do when we watch this fight together is when they get into exchanges, just pay attention to how hittable Landwehr is. He just doesn't move his head. He doesn't see the punches coming. So he's taking a little bit of time to recover here. He's obviously been hurt bad early on. So skip through just a little bit. But when he gets on the front foot again here, just watch how hittable he is. And Doo-Ho Choi is a far better striker than Jamal Emmers. There ain't no doubt about that. You can see there, he kind of just shells up. And he's just a bit of a sitting duck on the feet. And Choi's the same. Choi is better defensively. He does have better reflexes. But ultimately, Landwehr is still very hittable. I'm going to skip through just a little bit. Obviously, with striking, it just takes a little while for you to see in its entirety the point we're trying to make. You just see him in these exchanges. He's very vulnerable. We'll have a little look at the Ige fight as well. I think Choi's a better striker than both Emmers and Ige. mean, even to the point in the Darren Elkins fight, we saw Elkins land big shots on Landwehr. If you go back and watch that fight, I don't want to get into it here. I'll make the breakdown super long. You can just see in these exchanges, he's very hittable, very vulnerable. See there, he just walks onto that big right hand. The thing about Choi and Landwehr, why I think the fight is so likely to end inside the distance, neither guy likes to take a backward step. And when you've got two guys that don't want to take a backward step, something's got to give. Something has got to give. Yes, they're both tough. Yes, they're both durable. But they both get hit a lot as well. Both guys have got true legit knockout power. Just look there, he eats those clean punches. Clean combination from Emmers. And Choi is way more dangerous than Emmers. And then he gets the big KO. And both guys got that killer instinct as well. Do you know what? Do I even buy? We'll play a little bit of the Ige fight. We're not going to draw this one out. We're not going to drag this one out. Sorry. I'll play a little bit of the Ige fight. Nothing major. Nothing major. Am I just making this breakdown longer than it needs to be? Just see there, like, he doesn't like to take a backward step. Bit of a sitting duck on the feet. Yeah, we're just going to drag this one out. You can go do your own research if you need confirmation of what I said. I don't want to drag this video out, man. Alright, so, yeah. Fight doesn't go to decision like that. Most likely outcome, in my opinion, is actually Choi by knockout or TKO. The odds aren't great. But yeah, man, I hope you found that breakdown useful. And we will be locking in that bet, no doubt. So I hope you found that useful. If you did, please hit the like button. It would help this channel grow a lot. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my website. Links in the description below. If you watch every UFC event live, it's a no-brainer joining us in live betting. I don't know why every single person watching this hasn't joined, if I'm honest. It's just a total no-brainer. So, thank you very much for watching. Take care. Have a great weekend. Merry Christmas. We'll be back with the Santa hat next week. I love you all. And I will see you all very, very soon. Nice one, guys. Take care. Bye.